Hello and welcome to this Astranti bite-sized video. Today, as you can see from the screen in front of you, we are looking at PESTEL analysis. Now, this is a topic that you may have covered in your certificate level, but it is definitely a topic you will cover in your E3 exam as well as in your strategic level case study. And it's a really important tool. And what we're doing today is showing you an extract from one of our tuition videos dedicated to external analysis. But let's have a look at PESTEL analysis. So we're going to begin this PESTEL analysis section with a little story. We're going to bring two devices up on the screen for you. I don't know if you recognize the one on the left. It's a BlackBerry. Now, BlackBerries used to be immensely popular. Just to prove how popular they were, their share price was $144 in 2008. However, the lesson of this introductory story is that by 2013, their share price had fallen to $6.50, from $144 to $6.50. How did that happen? Well, it was down to one thing. It was down to a lack of adaptation to its changing external environment, because at the end of 2000s, a new technology came along, the smartphone. There was also a new way to communicate through social media, through apps on the smartphone. And people stopped emailing as regularly. Now, email was BlackBerry's speciality. And so, suddenly, its speciality was not needed anymore. And it didn't recognize this shift in technological and social changes. And by the time they eventually entered the market, or by the time had eventually entered the market, BlackBerry didn't have a chance, because Apple and Samsung had already cornered it. And so hopefully the lesson from this example is that businesses need to retain an awareness of how their business environment is changing, not only to survive, but to thrive. Because, of course, BlackBerry didn't survive, but perhaps they could have thrived if they'd seen these changes coming more quickly. Now, the reason we're talking about this is that PESTEL analysis helps companies analyze their changing business environment so they can adapt, so they can change and thrive and survive. It is the 6 key areas that businesses and organizations need to consider so they can remain aware of the current environment as well as take note of any future changes. And these 6 key areas we've already gone over are political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. These are broad macro factors. They're not like the microenvironments. They're not related to a specific industry or a company. These are broad factors. You can think of them more as national or international factors. So let's go and pay a little bit more attention, or let's go and focus on each factor individually. And we're going to start with the P for political. And this is to how and to what degree a government intervenes in the economy. And so this is basically all the ways in which a government can impact on a business. And the government can intervene in an economy in a number of ways, and those interventions will affect an organization. And it can be done in a vast number of ways, as I've said. If we just take tax policy, for example, let's imagine the government wants to attract businesses to a country, then it might set its corporation tax at low levels. So corporations want to base their headquarters in that country. But it doesn't just stop with tax policy. It can also move on to political stability or even instability, or labor laws or foreign trade policies. These are all ways that can impact upon our business. Governments also obviously hugely influence the health and the education and the rest of the infrastructure of a nation. And of course, that impacts on the country. If we think about education, well, of course, the availability of skilled labour really benefits organisations from that country. And also, government investment plays a major part. If government is investing huge amounts of money in its infrastructure, for example, well then of course that's going to provide work for organisations who can bid for the contracts to carry out that work. So there we go, political factors. How and to what degree does a government intervene in the economy? Or what ways does the government impact on businesses is another way to think about it. Okay, let's move on to the economic factors here, because these economic factors have a major impact on how businesses operate and make decisions. And these are factors such as economic growth, interest rates, exchange rates, and inflation rates. Let's take interest rates as an example. Well, interest rates affect a firm's cost of capital, and so that in turn impacts on the extent to which a business would grow and expand. Whereas exchange rates affect the costs for a business to export goods, as well as the amount of supplies they can import from abroad and the price of those goods. Let's scroll down to our next PESTEL factor now, which is social. And these are the cultural and demographic aspects in the population. Now again, these cover quite a wide variety of factors. So it may be a nation's attitude to health, or the rate of its population growth, or its age distribution, i.e. does it have an elderly population or does it have a young population, as well as society's emphasis on safety. So, for example, that may impact on a business because they may have more legislation to ensure that products are safer for their people. Now, these trends in social factors affect the demand for a company's products and how that company operates. And so any change in social factors can create risk for a business. In the UK recently, there's been a big change in people's attitudes towards food. A social trend is that people are looking at vegan food, they're looking at foods with less sugar added into it, and they're looking at food in terms of how far it's come in terms of its air miles and its impact on the environment. And so businesses have had to adapt to offer products that suit these new consumer trends. Even fast food restaurants such as McDonald's now offer really healthy options, whereas before they were famous for just big burgers and chips. And we talked about age distribution, and if we think about an aging population, well, with an aging population, it implies that the nation has a smaller and less willing workforce, and that in turn drives up the costs of labour for the organisations. And so that may affect a company's recruitment policy, because they then would have to focus on hiring older workers and making the work and the job suitable for an older workforce. So there we go, that's social factors. Let's drop down now to technological factors. And I think we're all aware of what the technological factors may include. They include things such as the internet, automation, rates of change, social media, computer security, all these technological advances that we read about every day in the press and on the internet. Now, organizations have to be aware of these changes, especially of those changes in their industry, so that they can manage the risks involved with the introduction of these new technologies. We just have to think back to our earlier example of Nokia and BlackBerry. These were market-leading companies who failed to understand new technological advances. They didn't adapt quickly enough to the technological changes, and so went from being major players, I should say, to becoming minor players in the industry, which goes to show the consequences, surely, of how high this technological risk can be. Okay, we're going to drop down now to environmental factors. This is the E of PESTEL, or it's the second E of PESTEL, I should say, and these factors include things such as weather and climate. Now, at Astranti, issues such as weather and climate don't especially affect me. But that's because I'm not in the tourism trade. That's because I'm not a farmer. That's because I'm not involved in insurance. Imagine you're a farmer. Well, then poor growing conditions are going to make a huge impact on a crop yield. And if we think about tourism as well, in the UK, there's a trend of summers getting hotter and encouraging people to staycation, which means just holidaying in the UK. Well, that's affecting other nations' organisations who cater to British tourists. But it's not just the weather and climate. Society, so it's kind of emerging society factors and environmental factors here, but it's the potential impact of climate change is also an environmental factor, and it's also affecting how companies operate. It's affecting the products they offer. I spoke earlier, didn't I, in the social factors, that people are becoming aware of the air miles of their food, how far their food has travelled across the world, because that in turn, is causing or help causing irreversible climate change. So businesses are having to be aware of this, and some businesses are advertising the short distance that their products have come from. So businesses have to be aware to be able to adapt to these changing markets. Environmental risks can also refer to not just the longer term changes such as climate change, but short term activities such as if an oil company spills oil in the ocean. Well, of course, that's going to have huge problems for the organisation that has done so. They're going to be fined, and also they're going to suffer huge reputational damage. Okay, what we're going to do now is move around to the last factor now, and that's legal. And these are all about laws, the varieties of laws that affect how a company operates, its costs, and the demand for its products. Now, of course, this should go without saying that companies have to be aware of the laws in the territories in which they operate. Otherwise, they may fall foul of them, they may break the laws, and that's going to result in fines or damages to their reputation, or perhaps even closure to the business. So legal factors are the laws of the territory in which a company operates. And of course, if we've got a multinational corporation, that means obeying the specific laws in each of the territories in which it operates. Okay, so there's the theory behind, the PESTEL factors. I hope you found this a really informative and short video, and also shows you what we do in our tuition videos. So if you like it, be sure to check out our tuition videos, but we also offer a range of other products that will really help you pass your E3 exams, such as our practice questions and our study texts. But if you just want more of these bite-sized videos, just be sure to like our videos or subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching.